Welcome everybody to day three actually, but it's day two of our recording webinar series. I'm joined by three panel experts. I'm going to ask them to introduce yourselves in a second. This session is being recorded, so we can have it on replay. We've got a whole bunch of people watching this live with us. And today's topic is, from a marketing perspective, it says SOX from the US to UK. And I'm not going to put anybody on the spot because none of us know what we're talking about when it comes to UK or US SOX. We're going to make it up as we go along, which we do all the time. But let me introduce the panel first. So Gemma, would you introduce yourself for me, please?
Yeah, I'm Gemma Durham, Senior Manager for P2P at Tarmac.
Thank you, Gemma. And Mary?
So hi, I'm Mary Schaeffer from AP Now across the pond, where we've been dealing with SOX for a few years now.
Thank you, Mary. And Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachael Long, and I'm Head of Accounts Payable for Breeding Group.
Thank you all. Right. Okay. So who wants the first question? Now, look, we're not going to do it this.
Wait, I have a question for you, Jamie.
Carry on.
So it just occurred to me as we're sitting here, we're calling it SOX, but the SOX was named after two US senators. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say in the UK, you're not going to name your bill after two US senators. So could you tell us, or tell me anyway, what the official name of this is?
I could tell you, but I don't know. No, it's I believe it's going to be called ARGA. ARGA.
Okay,
so the terminology is going to be called ARGA. But for what we know, and we know little about the UK version of SOX, is it's going to be similar. And we'll talk about this. We've got a couple of questions we're going to talk about. But in terms of the format, yes, we're calling it the US version, a UK version of SOX. But you're right, we're not going to call it Sarbanes-Oxley. But it's probably worthwhile just reminding everybody who's watching this live or sort of on replay, Mary, that I think it was 2006 that Sarbanes-Oxley came in the US, thereabouts. And
yeah, we talked about it forever.
And you know what? I don't know. I mean, the ladies you're all far too young to remember this. I was working in a US organization at the time, back in 2006.
Wasn't it fun?
It was lovely. It was, to be told that there's a big scandal going on, and any organization that had US owners, or you're in a US organization, that you were now going to be not only go through all the audits that you did, internal, external, you're going to have all this extra stuff you're going to do. So I remember it coming in. I remember nobody knowing what to do at that time. There was lots of expensive consultants flying around, making lots of money. Again, I think making it up as they went along. But Mary, you've got a book behind you, Sarbanes-Oxley, and I know you're an accomplished author. But in a nutshell, what is Sarbanes-Oxley in the US, if you don't mind?
So I mean, everybody was crazed here. It was the Enron scandal that I think finally pushed everybody over the edge. And you're right. The first year that it went into play, the company spent $1 gazillion and no extra staff, by the way. And you were we like to say, subject to the strictures of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And, people will ask me all the time, well, does Sarbanes-Oxley say I have to do this? Does Sarbanes-Oxley have to say we have to do that? All very nitty-gritty accounts payable things. And the answer is Sarbanes-Oxley doesn't address any of it. And I like to tell people, when you think about this, think about strong internal controls. Don't say Sarbanes-Oxley because that scares everybody. Say, we have to have strong internal controls. And, most of us know what strong internal controls are. We may or may not have them in our organization, but we know it. Now, that's not the whole act, but it's the part that applies to accounts payable. So just think in your mind, strong internal controls.
So, and that's a very good way of summing up things. But I'm going to ask our UK experts on the panel today, Gemma and Rachel. Now, I know it's awkward in your business, Gemma. I believe you already got the US version of Sarbanes-Oxley, and I believe also that the UK version probably won't impact you in the same route as Rachel. But again, a question to both of you: in terms of documented internal controls, have you both got them?
So
Yes.
Because we went through our accreditation as well, absolutely, yes, we have them in place. But yeah,
that's a good point, Jamie.
We are heavily influenced by it in the Sarbanes-Oxley world.
And Rachel?
We're probably not as good as Gemma. But we have an internal controls team. We used to call them internal audit. They now called internal controls and risk. And they document everything we do and keep it up to date. And they look at all the process and procedures, workflow it and look at it, and then help us enforce those processes and controls within the businesses.
And the point you make there, Gemma, and look, you should be a salesperson for the APA, shouldn't you, really? One of the things that the Team Tarmac went through, and this isn't a competition, by the way, Team Tarmac went through was the quality program, which is, Mary, you know about the APAQ program, which is a quality program. It's all about best practice, about continuous improvement. And we were delighted to have Tarmac go through that program. And, it was phenomenal. You had so many documented processes. There was some stuff you learned along the way, some stuff you had to improve on. And I've had the pleasure of working with Team Breeden as well. And again, it's very similar that you both work in a very tough environments. Construction, you've got lots of legislation around you as well. You've got lots of controls that you have to have, whether it's health and safety or actually back office type controls. But both of you have great back office teams, great back office team management, which is important, but also more importantly, documented processes and controls, which I'll be honest, I don't believe a lot of businesses have. And I think that's the challenge in the UK and Europe, Mary, that it's a forced issue in the US because of Sarbanes-Oxley. In the UK, and both ladies will know this, when we ask, our teams in the UK, have you got documented policies, procedures, AP manuals or policies? A lot of the time it's a no, and it's on the pipeline, it's on my wall at the back, I've got to do it. This is what I think is going to force that issue. And Mary, it must be that the same in the US, that in the early days back in 2006, a lot of organizations probably weren't ready, but now,
they weren't ready. Nobody knew what was going on, really knew what was going on. And in the US, Sarbanes-Oxley technically only applies to public companies, i.e. companies that are on a stock exchange, various stock exchanges, as we were talking earlier, Gemma. But so, a lot of people felt, oh, we're not a public company, we don't have to worry about that. And then surprise, surprise, guess what? A lot of the companies who had bank loans, their banks were saying, you know what? We want you to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley, and we want you to show us the documentation. And so for a year or two, when the act first went into play, it was terrible. Everybody complained bitterly, but I haven't heard a complaint about a Sarbanes-Oxley audit probably in 10 years now.
And Gemma, you go through Sarbanes-Oxley currently, I assume it's another set of controls. So you've got your internal, external auditors, you've got your internal controls that you go through, and you must have another reporting mechanism. So it's another, I dare say, a big spreadsheet you've got to go through, a set of controls. You must have to report that to a group company. How does that work for yourself, Gemma?
Yeah, so we have obviously a number of controls that sit across everything from AP through P2P expenses and everything like that. But we have to do a lot of documentation and evidence within our Blackline system. So everything's controlled by that one kind of overarching system alongside the internal controls team that also kind of overarch that and look at ways of process improvement as we go through as well, making sure that we're not doing controls for the sake of doing controls and that we do have them in the right and appropriate place. And I think, for anybody that's going to have to go through the UK controls process is, one of the key things is that documentation. But I imagine a lot of companies have documentation, but it's 10, 15 years out of date. So kind of the recommendation between now and then is start looking at them now, mark out what your pinch points are, mark out what your risk points are, because ultimately they're going to be the elements that you're going to need them controls around, aren't they?
And you know what? Sorry, Jamie, a lot of companies have automated parts or all of their AP function, and I'm willing to bet they haven't updated the documentation, or at least a lot of them haven't.
And you know what, Mary, again, I don't want to keep going back to the last couple of 3 years where we had to change processes, our working conditions. And look, a lot of people change working conditions because we're forced to. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the documentation may not have changed, the authorization limits, the way that things are authorized. And again, so even people have documented, maybe it's time to review that. And Rachel, I know that you work tirelessly. You've had some challenges over the last year or two.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. And on top of the day job of all the processing and the people and all the good stuff, we're now going to throw some new stuff at you legislation wise. Are you even contemplating preparing for the UK version of these SOX controls? What's the plan for yourself?
Yeah, so we've just in the last week or so had demonstrated a new software to help us control everything. So that's where we'll have a set of controls and process and procedures on there, and everyone has to be documented each month, and we have to upload them, and we're working through that at the minute. We've not seen it all yet. Internal controls are working through it with one of our they've changed the name recently, which is why I'm thinking about it. Breeding Technology Solutions. So they're working through that with internal controls and ourselves to get that where it needs to be, both from a AP, AR perspective as well. So we are working on it, and again, we still want to do the Q program. We've not got there yet, but it is on the radar to do. I've just added a few more heads to my budget for this year to try and get it done. So, among other things.
That's what you call commitment, Mary. Rachel's adding headcount to come and do the Q program, and we're going to tell her to take the headcount out because you do think. I jest. And look, Mary, from a point of view of readiness, and again, it's slightly different for Gemma, but is there any top tips we can give the people watching this either live or replay in terms of the readiness process? We talked a little bit about looking at your documented processes. We've got a book on your behind you, Mary.
It's old though.
No, look, but you know what? What I would say is that there's not many authors. I mean, not only are you a top-selling author in our world, but there's not many. And I would definitely suggest to either get one of those two books that are on Mary's shelf there. One's all about best practice, the other one's Sarbanes-Oxley, a guide. And a guide is always a good start, isn't it? It's not going to be detailed, and it's probably a little bit dated in terms of the US version of SOX. But again, other than buy the two books, get onto Amazon and get them and download them or whatever, is there any top tips in terms of readiness for the UK version?
Yeah. The first thing, and it's probably what I should say at the end, is the first year is going to be awful. Anytime you have anything new and you implement it, it's awful, but you'll adjust to it. So don't let that first year color your thinking and think, oh my God, this is going to be terrible all the time. You'll figure it out, you'll get it set up, and you'll be done. But in preparing for that, we've already kind of alluded to it. First of all, get your documentation up to date. Just make sure that your policy and procedures manual says what you're doing now, not what you did 3 years ago, 5 years ago. And I'd be willing to bet more than half of the people who listen to this do not have up-to-date policies and procedures. And then, take a step back and look at it. Okay, we've updated. This is what we're doing. Your policies and procedures have to be what you're doing, not what you think you should be doing. But then after you do that, mark off the points where you think you have weak internal controls and go ahead and fix them. Because the auditors will come, they'll be looking, especially that first audit, that first time you go through it, they're going to be looking for something. So try and eliminate as many of them as you possibly can. We've got a little bit of a heads up. So let's go ahead and do it. And also just don't be discouraged by how awful that first year is going to be, because it will be. It's like anything. It's like new technology.
Gemma, I can see you nodding along intently. So any guidance from you, Gemma? I know that you didn't implement the SOX controls at Tarmac, but lessons learned for you now that you're managing the control process.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things is reach out to the network. We all sit in the same space. We're all going to have the same type of controls in the same, arena that we all sit in. Don't sit there thinking, oh, I don't know what to do, or I've got no one to speak to. Reach out to the whole of the network, because that's what we're all here for. But also, if you inherit some of these in the future, kind of just don't accept that is all there is to it. Look for other areas of improvement around your controls. Are your controls that were implemented 12 months ago still fit for purpose? Are they then, future proofed, and all of them kind of things? So it is kind of about reacting to your controls and making sure that you're not doing them for the sake of doing them, but you're also making sure that they add the value that they're supposed to add. And again, if there's any kind of risk in the future, that you react to that and you wrap a control around it.
Love that. I love that. And my next question actually is going to go, we're going to extend on that, what you just said there, but I'm going to ask Rachel to chip in. So you've heard the ladies talk about US SOX and Yeah, some of the challenges, and let's be honest, Rachel, that, I know a little bit about the stuff that you've been up to in the business and the challenge you've had. And a lot of businesses have had the same. Some of them are bouncing back from, the last couple of 3 years. Some of them are having resource issues. The labour market in the in the UK, sorry, Mary, it's challenging. It's hard to get good quality people.
Same here.
And then it's hard to retain them, because it's a challenging world. We know it's challenging in accounts payable. And, Rachel's mentioned earlier, she's going to have to go and get some extra resource to assist in either this process or just the general day-to-day. So anything too scary in there, Rachel, other than resource?
No, just a bit of background, when I started at Breeden 5.5 years ago now, there weren't really, you'd be horrified at the lack of controls, lack of processes around these kind of things. And I'd got a big corporate background, so I brought in a lot of these processes and controls that Breeden have now, and we're literally just taking it to the next level. So with SOX, it's going to be the next level for us, which is why we're bringing in the new software, etc. So I have worked with SOX previously in other businesses, so it's not new to me. But within Breeden, with quite an old school business, and we buy small businesses. So we've just bought a small business with 5 people in, and the lady comes in on a Saturday morning to process the invoices and make the payments. So as you can imagine, there's no controls around what she's doing. So we then have to go in and put those controls in. So we're constantly putting controls and processes in the smaller businesses that we buy. And it always shocks me. We went over a couple of years ago to one of the businesses we bought, and they came out with physical paper ledgers. And there's no controls around that, and they still wrote checks out and things like that. So for me at the minute, we're way ahead to where we were 5.5 years ago, but we've still got a long way to go.
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that remark about checks.
I know you guys in America still do that.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
we had a session.
I'm glad you said it.
we had a session on Monday, didn't we, Mary? And we talked about payments and the evolution of payments, and we had the wonderful Lynn Larson. But yeah, we dodged and diverted around checks because our colleagues in the US.
Oh my God. And so, not only do we have the checks, but
oh, there we go. I think Mary's internet might be struggling a little bit. We'll carry on. Mary will join us again in a second. Look, one of the things I wanted to pick up, Gemma, was something you just said there about reaching out to the network. Look, there's Mary. There we go. The internet's back with the mouse is running around the wheel. One of the things that I think was a great piece of advice, by the way, is reach out to the network, because and it doesn't have to be in the UK shores, because we're talking about UK version of the SOX. Our friends and colleagues in the US as well, because they've already gone through the pain, which Mary alluded to. And there's lots of learnings that can happen. So I think that's a great bit of advice. Reach out to the entire network, the accounts payable network, learn from others, which I know we do. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you two about. So, Mary, whether you know or not, not only of all 3 of you are previous award winners with the Accounts Payable Association. I have 2 previous managers of the years who are Rachael and Gemma. There we go. So there's a bit of competition there, bit of competition already. But Rachael and Gemma are both they're in the construction industry, and they work. You could arguably say they're competitors in some of the things they do, but actually they collaborate, so we're going to sort of break down some of these myths about, competitors not being able to collaborate. And then Rachael and Gemma, I know in the background, I know you've worked a little bit together. Do you want to allude and share what you've been up to without going into too much detail, but just expel this myth that, if somebody's in a similar industry or a competitor, you can't at least share best practice?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I was keen to do was exactly like you say, whilst we sit in a competitor space, we actually have the same problems all day, every day. So opening up that kind of line of comms to say, right, let's get our heads together. And, I've done some structural things that Rachael was interested in talking about. And then, by kind of nature of that conversation, it then led us down when we use this technology and it's something that we're looking at. So we can then kind of say, well, actually, this is how we use it. These are the lessons that we learn as part of that implementation and them kind of things. So I think it's important that we do collaborate. you know, especially more so when it is the same kind of the same processes, the same sector and all of that. And, you know, when Rachel goes through controls and SOX and things like that, then obviously we can, you know, support on that element as well. You know.
Not only that, you know what challenges you each have that are unique or specific to your industry.
Yeah. And we can scream about that as well.
Yeah, I know when I think it was one of the conferences and I was talking about reverse charge VAT and CIS, and Gemma said to me, my team have just literally texted me and gone, everybody, oh my God, Breeden have the same issues we have. And it is, you know, we do have the same issues, we do have the same problems, we do have some of the same supplier base and the same customer base. So you know, we obviously we're not allowed to talk about that to each other, but you know, we have the same issues and we know what those issues are. And it's quite interesting to realize that you're also not on your own, which was very good yesterday at the conference as well, because I was talking to a few people about the finance transformation stuff that we're going through at the minute. So it's great just to collaborate with the whole of the network. But again, for me and Gemma, you know, we've got the same issue, the same problems, and it's great to have a good old moan about it.
Yeah. So you see, this is why we're dispelling myths. We've gone off the topic of UK and US SOX, but I think, you know, going back to that topic, so I just really wanted to finish that topic because, look, I've got three of the global gurus in front of me, and I'm going to ask you some questions. There's three female global leaders, and I'm sitting there as what is it, the thorn between three roses, or I don't know what it is. But I just wanted to sort of finish that topic of the UK US SOX. Look, you've got three people here ultimately going at different stages. Mary's written a book. She's you know, absolutely a renowned expert in all things AP, but absolutely there's a book that you can download. There's two, you can see them there. Mary will share links to those. Gemma's inherited a team and a process, and she's managing this day to day in a sort of US SOX. And Rachael is going to go through this process. So you've got three people to reach out, absolutely, as well as, and I think Gemma said this, was you've got a network of people. And the only way that we'll work this out and go through that pain is collectively. So please, please, please use the network. So look, I've got three of you on here. I'm not going to let you go before
I got one more tip for the audience.
Oh, please, yes, Mary, carry on.
So a lot of times you want to get training or you want to implement change in your department, and you either can't get management support or you can't get money to do it. Okay, this is a perfect time because everybody is probably, all your management team is probably worried about the Sarbanes-Oxley, the ARC, or whatever you're going to call it. So this is the point in time to bring this up and go and say, hey, we want to go through the quality program. We want to update, whatever it is you want to do, go and mention ARC and say, you know, we want to get the department ready so that, you know, the accounts payable department at least will be in compliance or almost 100% compliance when we finally get audited. And sometimes if you have this regulatory component, they'll see the light. Okay, sorry.
Love it. Thank you, Mary. And another plug for the quality program. I love it.
Right.
Rachel, you're
but
the only one.
but it's a good idea.
No, you know what? I think, you know, and I'm purposely not trying to plug what we do, but you're right. Yeah. I think the quality program either gets you ready or it goes back over the controls you already have and it tries to improve. So yes, look, it's not a shameless plug, but I appreciate the thoughts on that. So look, let's get on to what I want to ask you the question. So yesterday at the forum, as you know, Rachel, we broke into small groups and we went through the challenges of, you know, there was three things we talked about. We talked about the current state of affairs within accounts payable and procure to pay. We talked about the technologies that are for the futures and what we're doing today, and are they ready, and are we feeding back to technology providers about what we actually need. We then thirdly talked about the future, you know, what could the future look like and are we really ready for that? And then we went into the fourth area, which was really good and exceptional. It was a conversation about people. It was very much around, have we got the right people, the right training? Are we still training people around processes that were 15 years, 20 years ago? And are we having the future of the people? So it was exceptional. And we whiteboarded lots and lots of stuff. Now, one of the things, or several things that came out was a confidence issue about, you know, imposter syndrome, self-belief. It came out quite strongly across all of the groups that were making lots of notes, because one of the questions that was asked to all of the groups was, look, you're talking about the, you know, where we are, you're talking about the opportunities. And the third and last question was, what's holding you back? You know, we all know what the answers are, and we collectively probably worked out what the answers should be. And the very strongly came out was self-belief, imposter syndrome, and almost as though people didn't really want to put their head above the parapet because they were worried about what that meant and whether they could get challenged. Now, 3 very successful AP leaders individually, have you ever had that before? Have you got any tips if you've gone through it and you sort of overcome this whole imposter syndrome? I'm going to start with you, Rachel, if you don't mind.
I knew you were going to do that to me.
You were there yesterday, so you should know the answers.
I really struggle on a personal perspective with imposter syndrome because, you know, it's me. I just do this and I get on with it. I go up in the morning, I do what I do when I go home. I just don't, you know, and then I find myself on stage at the APA as an expert and I'm like, what happened? How did this happen? You know, and it's very difficult for me, but within the business as well. You know, APs, as we discussed yesterday, me and Phil had a right good moan, me and Phil Spence, just basically about the perception of AP and how it's negatively perceived in a lot of businesses, because a lot of businesses don't have professional AP teams.
Mhm.
And one of my team actually said to me this morning, AP's one of those jobs where you just walk through it. People don't stay in AP, but I think we're now massively seeing a change in that. Certainly in my team, I'm getting people that want to have a career in AP and progress through the team. You know, if they want to do my job, great. That's great for AP. They're being promoted. Some of them go into the finance teams as management accountants. Not quite sure why they do that, but we do promote it as much as we can if that's what they want to do. But it's quite an interesting, imposter syndrome is quite an interesting thing because I don't understand it in my own head, you know, and people were saying yesterday, the panels went well, it was really good, but I'm like, well, it's me. I just get on with it. And it's really, I don't get it.
But yeah, look,
you know,
we'll
I'll
dig
go
dive
eat.
into... Sorry about Mary.
Can I tell her what one of my bosses told me when I was saying something almost exactly the same? It's no big deal. He said to me, it may be no big deal for you, but it's a big deal for everybody else. So stop putting yourself down.
Yeah. Well, my boss actually called me today. She's at the country at the minute, but she said, oh, the CFO rang her on Monday to say, what's going off with LinkedIn? I've been on LinkedIn. All it is Rachel and the AP team and Shannon's Kate. What's going off? And even he's noticed it. So we are getting that voice out there. And I think that's really good for the AP industry and us as professionals.
And it's good for Rachel too.
Yeah, and you know, look, I'm going to ask Gemma to answer the same question, but we'll deep dive into what you've said in a second, Rachel, because I've got my view of this as well, which I'm going to give in a second. So, Gemma, I mean, you're new-ish now. I'm going to use the ish word because you've been in our community for a while now, but you are newish because you do come from a credit background. So you were hopefully accepted into the AP world. So it must have been there at the start, if not now. So how did you overcome over it? Or is it still there?
No, it was horrific. No disrespect. I'd gone from having a wobble around leading people, and I took a 2-year hiatus out to just go and consult and, you know, work in software. So to not only step into an arena that I knew nothing about, but to step into an industry and back into leading a team, and then be catapulted into the APA and also catapulted into Tarmac. So very quickly, you know, there was lots of progress made within the team and the kind of morale within the team and the processes and all of that kind of stuff. So kind of the respect from the team lifted very fast, and they were like, you know, savior of P2P and all of that. So I struggled with that, as well as then kind of stepping in with yourself and being on panels and all of that. And it was like, how is somebody like me who knows nothing about AP, they just pay people, you know, that kind of it's got it really easy. That kind of, how is little youngish me in that world, and then to, you know, sit there October last year and manager of the year, team of the year, and all of that, it was absolutely massively kind of great personally and for the team, but it just still that imposter syndrome is really high. But I think one of the biggest kind of things that I take away over the last, it's now 2.5 years, you know, I've been here, so it's a while, is when the FD said, I no longer have sleepless nights around P2P. That to me was the okay, you know, I can stop feeling that a little bit now. And, you know, with yourself not making me, you don't force me, but putting me out there to, you know, get over my own public speaking issues that I have, and that kind of embarrassment level that I feel when I'm doing that. So, you know, that's kind of step by step, slowly by slowly.
So have you gotten rid of the imposter syndrome?
No, not at all. And I think it's also, I've probably reflected that it's a little bit healthy as well, because
Yeah.
you're never then going to step too far, or, you know, think that you're bigger than the team, or anything like that. So I think it's healthy to keep me grounded, and that, you know, by wanting to continue to prove to myself, I always continue to want to prove to the team. And that means that I'll always be the best that I can be for the team.
Love it. And look, I mean, again, and I'm going to answer. I'm going to go back into Gemma's in a second. So I've got, not that I've got all the answers, but I'm going to give both of these ladies not a telling off, but I'm going to tell them in a second. Look, Mary, as a public speaker, AP guru for a long time, somebody that didn't come from AP, you come from the world of Treasury. And also, you must have had elements where you may have felt the imposter syndrome and the self-belief. You know, I just want our audience to know that even somebody as such as yourself, an accomplished author, a guru, you know, and as somebody that's been in that world a long time, has this happened to you, and what have you done about it?
All the time. So all the time, but most of the time, you know, I just put my head down and do what I want to do, and do what I like to do. And as Gemma kind of alluded to, you know, AP is not an area that often gets a lot of respect. So, you know, it would be a double battle. Like, why are these people listening to me? And then how dare they disrespect AP and call it the black hole, or just say, oh, it's no big deal. So it goes that way. The public speaking is hard. It gets better. It gets easier, but not easy. Easier. If you do it, the more you do it, the easier it gets. I don't think it will ever be easy. And also just the recognition that a lot of people have the imposter syndrome. I was talking to my son, who I think, not that I'm biased or anything, is a very accomplished individual. And he said to me, you know, I look around sometime and I think, you know, what am I doing here? Why are they, you know, giving me all this, asking me, you know, why do they look at, and I'm thinking to myself, you feel that way? Everybody feels that way, I think, except maybe you, Jamie.
No, look, hey, listen, I'm personally, you know, I've had that feeling lots of times, both self-belief. I've had the feeling of maybe I don't belong, you know, the whole imposter syndrome. So the myth thing is it real? Yes, it is. Absolutely. It's a real thing. It happens to almost everybody, if not everybody. It's about really, you know, it's like everything. You've got to own up to it and say, yes, this is probably happening. I'm out of my comfort zone, and imposter syndrome is a real thing, and it might be happening to me. But delving into what can you do about it? And again, Rachel, you were there yesterday. A comment I heard, which upset me at the same time as didn't surprise me, was somebody made the comment, look, you know, anybody here in this group have imposter syndrome? And a few people put their hands up, and they're female. There was a group of predominantly females in my group, and one of the more senior people in the group said, oh, it's because you're female. So that's what was said. And I stood there and I thought, oh my God, please somebody, you know, respond. And everybody sat there really quietly. And I thought, okay, so this is where the heart of the issue for me is. It's the confidence, the self-belief.
Yes.
I think imposter syndrome comes from yourself. You know, I think, you know, people use, not excuses, but they use areas like, we're not qualified. Others will do this and think this of me. And Rachel's comment was, although she says it in jest, it's little old me and I just get up and do my job. Little old you, Rachel, and the work you do, it's hard. You know, let's be honest, you know, the grass isn't always greener, and I'm sure there's plenty of people in your team would love your job, but then not realize probably what you do. And
so Jamie, can I ask you something? Who said that it was mostly women? Was it a woman who said it, or a man? Was a woman said? I think women are more willing to own up to it.
Yeah, I think so. But the person who said it was very senior, actually.
Okay.
And when I heard it, my heart sunk a little, because I thought, well, look, you know, this is the reason why I bring it up today, by the way, because three really powerful senior leaders within an AP world who, I know that's not your challenge. I know that's not your challenge, but it was disheartening for me to hear it. But it is a real challenge, isn't it? I mean, being a female in a male dominated, can be a male dominated world, can be a challenge. But it's overcome. You can overcome it. You know, the reality is rather than have the blockers and, you know, we're not qualified, we're not respected, we're not rewarded, we're not loved. These are all things that we can overcome.
Yeah.
And being a female, a male, whatever color, race, whatever, I personally, I just want to get over that, because ultimately, if your skills are there and you're a leader, which I know all three of you are absolutely, and we have a massive network of people that do this. This is why I wanted to bring it up today, because imposter syndrome is a real thing, but we really need to start beating this. We really need to start raising our profiles, having self-belief, being more confident. And going back to your point, Gemma, using your network as a support group. I think that's a really important factor, because yesterday at the forum, it just felt like everybody wanted to support one another. Yeah. Yes, there was the odd comment that was thrown in, but everybody wanted support.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you know, we all feel that, we've all been through that journey. So, you know, we can, you know, I had mentors growing up that I now see that I'm a mentor for other people. And if they can see that we're raw about our feelings around the fact that, yes, you've got 3 leaders on here, but we also suffer that. You know, we suffer with that confidence around public speaking. We suffer with that confidence around imposter syndrome and waking up every day thinking I've got to be good for my team. I've got to be better, or, you know, and Rachel and I both sit in a very male dominated world, you know, and that's something that not just imposter syndrome, but we deal with all day, every day. So as women, it's sometimes hard to get that voice heard. I've kind of got to the point where I'm not apologetic. Ask for forgiveness, not
women do that
kind of stuff. But unfortunately, you know, we are in that sector.
It is difficult. And one of the things I did this morning, actually, I sent some photos of the APA conference yesterday, or the forum yesterday, to Brad Burton, who I have done some work with on my speaking skills, etc., with Brad. And literally, he sent me a voice note this morning, you know, saying, don't be ridiculous, you looked absolutely fantastic, the photo looked great. So it's that, you know, that support network around me that does help me slowly start to believe. Going back to Gemma's point, within the male dominated environment, I'm slightly different within that, because I'm quite tough with that area, because we have to be, Gemma, don't we? Yeah. And, you know, I'm more likely to be tougher in a work environment than I am standing on stage. So I think that's where I don't suffer imposter syndrome so much in a work environment with a meeting room full of guys, but it's more when I'm on stage and, you know, it's little old me, people actually want to listen to what I'm saying, I hope. So that's the slight difference for me, I think.
Well, I hope they do.
They do, absolutely. You're right, Mary. Come on, this is this confidence. And you know, we talked to this again yesterday. We talked about the apologies. We don't need apologies. No. You know, we are the experts. We are collectively the people who listen to this, the people in our industry. It's hard. It's hard in our industry. And you know, you know, Mary, we do courses, and as you do, and you know, you write books on a subject, Mary, where I'm assuming there's more than one page in your book. And you know, so if the first page was you process an invoice and make a payment, and then you do a statement rec, it'd be a short book. I'm pretty sure you've got lots of pages in your book. In our courses and our qualifications we have 300-400 pages in our stuff.
Right.
And I remind people that every day is different. It's a very challenging world. So look, one of the things I will say, and I'm going to plug this then now, Mary, we're doing a conference later in the year, and part of the topic is imposter syndrome. It's about self-belief and imposter syndrome. And you know, we've worked really hard, you know, myself, Mary's community, all the communities that try and support the global, you know, AP and P2P communities. And we have absolutely become a profession. That's the reality. We're a profession. We're a standout profession. We are the likes of all the accountant professions and the institutes. It's time our audiences follow suit, get your head above the parapet. Let's try and beat some of this imposter syndrome and be proud to be part of a profession. You know, we call ourselves professionals. We're in a profession, and that's what this year's conference is about. So I very rarely get on my soapbox. I do promise. So I'm going to do a talk on it. I'm going to do a talk, and I'm going to put myself out the comfort zone, and rather be the MC, I'm going to try and do a keynote on it and see whether I can do what Brad does a little without the
curse.
Yes, I'm going to shout, I'm going to curse, shout, but I really want to get that passion into people.
Yeah.
We're part of a profession. This is our time. You know, this is, we've
Right.
a long time coming, and I think we need to be really proud of this. So look, we're coming to the last part of the section, ladies. Take into account, we've talked to the UK Sox, we talked a little bit about, you know, the challenges we face with imposter syndrome. Can I ask each of you to give a younger version of yourself, and only slightly younger, a bit of advice? You know, you're going to come into the world of accounts payable for the first time. You're thinking about maybe even going into that leadership type role. What would you advise your younger self? And I'm going to start with you, Mary, first, and then I'm going to go to Gemma and then Rachel, if that's all right.
So I would say a few things. Number one, be brave. Don't be afraid to speak up. If you have a suggestion or a recommendation, make it. I know when I started out, I wouldn't talk. Be flexible, because you have to be flexible. We've got a lot of change coming in the accounts payable space. You've got even more because you're going to have your SOX. We've got new technology, all of this, and realize you have something positive to contribute. Keep learning. And also going back to your imposter syndrome, when you're playing the day over in your head, remember the 100 good things that people said about you, not the one bad thing that some naysayer said.
Love it. Thank you, Mary. And Gemma?
I think I wouldn't personally change anything that I've done, because I've learned by, you know, everything that I've done has turned me to the person that I am. But probably learn by your mistakes, because for every good, you know, we all make mistakes. We're all human and everything like that. And know the difference between a manager and a leader.
Good. I love it. I love that, Gemma. And last but not least, Rachel.
My piece of advice would be learn from the people around you. So you've got experience, older people around you, learn from those people, pull the information out of them, pull the knowledge out of them. I remember one of my FCs in one of my first jobs, when I used to work with cash books a long time ago, and I was a penny out. And literally it did my head in, and I was like, I can't find it. It was like, you will find it, because you could be a penny out one side and 999,000 out the other side. And the hours I spent finding that penny, but it taught me so much to learn how to, you know, get patience. But he was absolutely right. And I learned so much from him, but from the other FCs and FDs and colleagues around me, just learn from other people, and you will learn so much more.
And what about you, Jamie? What advice would you give yourself?
Well, no, don't do it. No,
I was going to say that, but I thought we were allowed.
Yeah. We'd all say don't do it.
Do you know what? If I was to you know, firstly I'd say use some hair product that makes your hair stay in. But a younger self, I would say, I think to Gemma's point again, I think, you know, I wouldn't change a thing. Obviously, you know, I think where we've all come to is, you know, we're all still on our journey, but I definitely would think that I would like to find my voice a lot earlier. I think, you know, learn from others, but be more confident. You know, what's the worst that can happen if you share your opinions and you try and promote and push yourself? And I think that everybody can learn from that. And all we do, you know, Mary, and all our both communities is all about promoting and try and push people forward. I just wish we'd have done it earlier, that's all. So that'd be my tip. Plenty of others, I'd no doubt. But look, today has been exceptional. Thank you for taking the time to come along. Our panelists, our expert panelists, as always, have been superb. Thank you to the people who watched live. One of our live attendees, before we finish, was let me just have a quick look here. Yes, Marcia's still on. So Marcia joined us yesterday, and you know, Rachel,
yes,
she said, oh, I'm really shy and I don't want the microphone. My God, we gave her the microphone, we couldn't get it off her. She just was amazing. She was absolutely phenomenal. So I know I can see you're watching us at the moment, Marcia. You were brilliant yesterday. You found your voice. She was phenomenal. And, you know, I tried to get her to sing and she wouldn't. But look, it's been excellent. Thank you so much. Hopefully our audience have learned some stuff. It's part of our Accounts Payable Appreciation Week. Keep turning the air blue. I've just seen so much, you know, blue. I see so much activity, cake baking, you name it, I've seen it. Please carry on. And thank you all for your support today. And we'll see you again tomorrow for our live session at 4 p.m. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.